Time to take a look at one of the Imperium's fanciest flags then. Let's talk about the Sanguinary Ancient and the Standard of Sacrifice. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we look to get the most out of your miniatures on the tabletop. Today we're continuing our Blood Angel series with a look at one of the key support characters, the Sanguinary Ancient. This is a character that I'd until recently not paid too much attention to, but now he's had an absolutely phenomenal points drop in Chapter Approved 2019. I certainly include him in a list of key units in the Codex, and a cheap and very powerful buffing character. In this video we'll take a look at his rules, any obvious buffs and upgrades we can give him, where we'll talk about the Standard of Sacrifice, which is a great relic, and then we'll talk about how I would use one on the battlefield. In the background, at the start of each campaign, one Sanguinary Guard member is sometimes chosen to become a Sanguinary Ancient and bear the Blood Angel's chapter banner into battle. They don't allow these banners out of their armoury lightly, as each one is a great relic dating from ages past, often back to the Great Crusade. When on the field, they can inspire the Sons of Sanguinius to even greater acts of heroism, because as we all know, people always fight better if they can see a flag. So let's take a look at his datasheet now. As we just said, he received an absolutely massive points drop in Chapter Approved 2019. His base cost is now 55, and when you include his On-Carmine sword he must take, he's just 63 points, which really isn't bad for a support character of his calibre. His profile is only slightly increased from the base Sanguinary Guard model. He's got an extra attack, so 3 attacks, 2 extra wounds, so he's 4 wounds, and an extra pip of leadership, making him leadership 9. So he is very much a buffing character rather than someone who's just going to go out and solo enemy threats by himself. At base, he is now armed with a Angelus bolt gun, an On-Carmine sword, and frag and crack grenades. His main war gear also got cheaper, which also helped bring his points down. He has the option to trade out his bolt gun for an Inferno pistol or plasma pistol. I'd probably not bother with either of these. You really don't want to be overcharging the plasma pistol, even if he has reroll 1s. You don't want to run the 1 in 36 chance of just sniping your own character to try and get a little bit more damage through. I'd personally keep the Angelus bolt gun, which is very good and very cheap. He can take a death mask for 2 additional points. This really isn't such a bad pick. When you're picking them on a unit of Sanguinary Guard, you have to pick it on all of them. So say if you're running 10 men, it's a 20 point upgrade. This one is a 2 point upgrade, so I'd probably usually take this actually. It can give you -1 leadership for enemies nearby, which you can increase with a stratagem, and it allows another couple of useful stratagems as well, such as being -1 to hit in the assault phase if he needs a defensive buff. It won't come into effect most games, but maybe if 1 in every 5 games it makes an extra model flee, it's probably going to be paying for itself. Finally, you can replace the On-Carmine sword with an On-Carmine axe or a power fist. The On-Carmine axe is the same and the power fist is 1 more point. Personally, I prefer these 2 options to the sword overall, but I think it is personal preference. The sword will have him being better against low toughness elite infantry, and the power fist and axe will be better against medium targets and tanks. I'll probably pick the power fist of the 3, but between that and the axe I think it's quite close. I like both of the heavier options myself. Now we get onto his special rules where the real value lies. First of all, the Blood Angel's chapter banner will give you a 6-inch bubble of +1 leadership, and also reroll wound rolls of 1 in the fight phase for Blood Angel's units. These are 2 reasonably decent buffs. The leadership buff can actually be kind of useful on big units of Sanguinary Guard, Death Company and Vanguard vets, where you could potentially be losing 7 or 8 models a turn if the enemy focuses them, and being a bit more resistant to leadership isn't a bad thing. The reroll of wound rolls in the fight phase is a much more solid benefit though. It essentially makes him like a lieutenant, but his rerolls only apply in the fight phase, which to be fair is where Blood Angels do most of their damage. For just 63 points or 65 with the death mask, adding reroll 1s to a massive fighter unit of Blood Angels is certainly a solid buff to their damage output and could well be worth it just by itself. He has the standard Space Marine and They Shall Know No Fear, Bolter Discipline which you won't use, Combat Doctrines which could either give him some extra AP with that bolt gun, or extra attacks and extra AP if in the Blood Angel's Assault Doctrine, and Shock Assault, so he'll typically be hitting with 4 attacks in the first round of combat. He, like the rest of the Sanguinary Guard, have the Heirs of Azkaellon special rule, which means he rerolls hit rolls if he's within 6 inches of a Blood Angel's Warlord, and he has Jump Pack Assault, which means that you can deploy him in the sky, and have him drop down to support a unit of Sanguinary Guard or Death Company or something, to give his nice buffs in close combat. This rule also works quite well with the Red Thirst ability, giving him +1 to charges, making him more likely to make a charge if he comes in from Deep Strike, and also a little bit of extra +1 to wound in the fight phase that he charges. So overall, he's a solid little buff character, giving a reroll 1's aura within 6 inches, being decently fighty himself, having a jump pack and fancy close combat gear and a decent gun included into his points cost, reasonably durable compared with lieutenants because of their 2-up save, and has some additional fun special rules such as Heirs of Azkaelon and the Death Mask rule. So quite a lot going on there for quite a cheap support character. Let's see what other additional buffs we can put on him. First of all, we'll talk about Relics and Warlord traits, and the really big one here is Standard of Sacrifice. This will give out a 6-inch bubble of 5-up Feel No Pain type saves to all Blood Angels units that aren't Death Company within range. This is a really solid defensive buff that you can use to shore up your infantry. Any infantry and biker unit can make use of this, but the ones that are going to get the most value out of it are multi-wound infantry models, things like Sanguinary Guard, who will absolutely love this, as it provides some really good protection against damage to weapons. Also things like Terminators will become even more durable with this rule, or running alongside some foot-slogging Intercessors, where they'll be even more durable than their Death Company Intercessor counterparts. Aggressors are also another very solid choice. You could run this guy alongside some aggressors advancing up the board, where they'll be abnormally durable to incoming enemy fire. Of course, the Standard of Sacrifice also works on himself, so is also a durability buff for the model himself, and any other characters nearby provided they're not Death Company. This really is an incredibly solid relic, and I'd strongly consider using it every time I use an Ancient. That being said, the other relic I would strongly consider is the Icon of the Angel from Blood of Baal. This can let nearby squads re-roll charge distances when they're nearby him, which is a very powerful buff indeed, particularly for Blood Angels units coming out of Deep Strike, if you don't want to spend the command points on the 3d6-inch charge, or you're dropping down multiple units in one go. This one is another really solid pick, and being a cheap support character that you're good to position wherever is most useful for you, he's a great bearer of it. So 2 really solid options there. You can also potentially make this guy your Warlord, and to be honest, the Blood Angels Warlord traits aren't really the strongest on this guy, they tend to buff combat, but you could have him make Blood Angels units nearby completely ignore morale with Heroic Bearing, could be useful on some Death Company, or perhaps let him deny some psychic powers with Soul Warden. For me, the main reason to actually make him my Warlord though, would be to run alongside a large blob of Sanguinary Guard, where their Heirs of Azkaelon special rule means they would be able to re-roll all failed hits in the shooting and fight phases, which is a truly enormous buff, bearing in mind that they can be a very big unit carrying all manner of horrible fancy close combat weapons. So there's some good synergy there between that and the banner of self-sacrifice. In terms of other characters, obviously he can both give and receive buffs to other characters, both from his aura ability and the aura ability of either of his relics if he chooses them. Obviously Captains and Dante can let him re-roll hits in close combat, Apothecaries can heal him, and he can provide other characters with his re-roll 1s, or maybe the Feel No Pain or re-roll charges if he's taken relics. As a Blood Angels jump infantry unit, there's all sorts of stratagems you can use on him. As a cheap support character, I wouldn't go overboard on using stratagems on him though. I'd consider using Behold the Golden Host to make his Death Mask ability 12-inch range, should you be forcing morale checks on multiple enemy units for whatever reason. You could use Upon Wings of Fire to reposition him if it was crucial, though this could be better used on a more fighty character. If you've got CP to burn and no other characters making use of it, then Red Rampage is always good for adding a few extra attacks, though compared with Captains he isn't the strongest. And Blood of Baal does give you a few more options unique to Sanguinary Guard or Death Mask bearing units. In general though, don't spend too many command points on him, save it for your more fighty characters. So how would I use this guy in an actual game of 40k then? I think that we've already detailed the main strategies. This guy absolutely loves to be dropped alongside a big unit of Blood Angels assaulting elites, particularly Sanguinary Guard. I would really strongly consider either of the relics, the Standard of Sacrifice or Icon of the Angel, depending on what other buffs I've invested in for those units, or whether I put aside the command points for a 3d6-inch charge. I'd probably be looking to start him off the board in Deep Strike Reserve, then drop down either turn 2 or turn 3 alongside that unit. I'd drop him second after the unit came down, so he's potentially screened from any intercept actions such as Auspex scan, but I'd position him as close to the enemy unit as I can to ensure that if he does fail his charge, it's very easy to chain a few models back to still be in his multiple aura ranges. I just think strongly about whether I actually want to charge this guy in. He does have some decent melee in himself, but if he's going to put himself at risk at being clocked on the head by an enemy character with a nasty melee weapon or something, then I'd have nothing against just leaving him out of combat to buff the actual close combat units, and keeping those buffs safe for the next turn. As the game goes on, he could be a bit of a nuisance character. If the squads that he's escorting dies, he could be used to jump in and tie up enemy tanks, things like that. Or could maybe use on Wings of Fire to jump up and maybe come down and buff another unit of Deep Strikers coming in. The alternative take could be to start him on the board alongside Aggressors or Intercessors, and use the Standard of Sacrifice to make a horrendously durable advancing Blood Angels gun line that's going to be absolutely murderous when they get into close quarters due to Red Thirst and the reroll ones in the fight phase. The Standard of Sacrifice's 5-up Feel No Pain aura is so strong that you can certainly build around it. Blood Angels Intercessors next to this will make Iron Hands Intercessors look positively weak and flimsy. Obviously, Blood Angels can only invest in so many buffing units for their Deep Strike units, and this guy not being an HQ choice is a real weakness. It might mean that he's more likely to be left out in favour of things like captains, special characters such as the Sanguinary or the Sanguinary Priests. But if I had the spare points for another buffing unit that wasn't an HQ unit, then this guy would probably be my first pick to run alongside some deep striking threats. He's just so cheap, and with a relic he just does so much. I'd certainly put him as a highly competitive Blood Angels unit. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you've had any success running him on the tabletop yourself. I'll be continuing my Blood Angels series over the course of this week, and rounding off some of the last options in the Codex that we haven't covered. Again, thanks very much for listening. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see any of that, or to support me on Patreon if these videos are being useful content to you. I'll hope to see you guys next time.